My relationships have always been a little crazy. I've never had any luck finding those cool girls. But this time it seems like everything has crossed the line. In the beginning, everything was perfect. My girlfriend and I went out and enjoyed ourselves with all our friends. We went to places and different bars. We loved going out for drinks and relaxing. I really felt that she was the woman of my life. However, one fine day at a meeting with friends, a friend of mine having a beer said, "Man, what about Natasha? Have you still seen her?" At that point, my girlfriend freaked out asking who Natasha was, and I, embarrassed, said that she was a childhood friend. My friend, talking about it, said that she was a childhood crush of mine. I thought to myself, what a son of a... I took a deep breath and tried to explain to her that it wasn't what she was thinking. However, she remained calm and said nothing. It was at that moment that I started to break out in a cold sweat and thought, what is she going to do? After that tense night, I thought the Natasha thing was dead and buried. But I realized I was mistaken. My girlfriend started acting strangely, asking subtle questions about my past, wanting to know more details about my childhood friendships. I tried to stay calm and respond casually, but every question she asked felt like a time bomb waiting to explode. One day, we were going out to a bar with friends when she blurted out of nowhere, "Did you know that Natasha is living here in the city now?" My heart almost stopped. I had no idea, and the mere mention of it made me uncomfortable. But I kept my composure and said I didn't know. She gave a strange smile and said that maybe it would be a good idea to meet her one of these days. After all, it was good to see old friends. I just nodded, trying to appear unconcerned, but inside I was a mess. What was my girlfriend planning? Why did she suddenly want to find Natasha? I decided it was best not to entertain that idea and changed the subject quickly. The days passed and my girlfriend no longer mentioned Natasha, which made me a little relieved. Then, one Friday night, when we were hanging out with our usual group, she turned to my friend who had mentioned Natasha earlier and with a sweet smile said, "Hey, why don't you tell us more about Natasha?" My heart raced. He, without realizing the trap, started talking about how Natasha was always beautiful and popular at school, and how all the boys, including me, had a crush on her. I wanted to disappear. My girlfriend listened intently, that same strange smile on her face, but her eyes didn't show any emotion. After a few minutes of conversation, she interrupted my friend and, still with that smile, said, "Interesting. So, love, how is it meeting Natasha again?" I stood there mute, with my eyes fixed on my girlfriend, not knowing what to answer. She wasn't just curious, she was up to something, and I had no idea what it could be. My breathing became increasingly labored, but this time I was firm and replied, "I haven't met Natasha again, and I don't even want to. She was just a friend of mine in the past. Now I don't even have her contact anymore." My friend thought it was all very funny, but he didn't know the level of trouble he could be causing. We continued talking for several moments until we all started drinking a little, and for a moment, we forgot the time, and when we went to see it, we were all laughing peacefully. My girlfriend started laughing and said, "Don't mind my stupid jealousy. I don't know why that happens. It's just that sometimes I'm very insecure, but I love you." Everything was going very perfect. I was moved when she said that, but I had already taken a few too many, and when that happens, we end up confusing names. Until the moment I said, "I love you too, Nat." Before finishing the sentence, her fury returned, and she said, "Did you get my name wrong? Is that really what I understood? It's not possible that you're doing this." My friends were embarrassed at the time. She frowned again and didn't say anything else. After that disastrous night, I thought things might calm down, but it was exactly the opposite. The tension between the two of us increased. My girlfriend, who previously seemed to have understood and accepted the situation, was now even more distant and suspicious. The following days were filled with awkward silences and short conversations. She started asking strange questions like, "Do you think I'm pretty?" Or, "Do you think Natasha is prettier than me?" I always tried to reassure her, saying that she was the most beautiful woman I knew, and that Natasha was a thing of the past, but nothing seemed to be enough. Then one day, she just disappeared. She didn't respond to my messages and didn't answer my calls. I was worried, wondering if something bad had happened. After hours of no news, she showed up at home, acting as if nothing had happened. When I asked her where she was, she just smiled and said she needed some time to think. Over the next few weeks, things started to get even stranger. She started going out alone frequently, often without telling me where she was going. When I asked, she responded evasively, saying she was visiting a friend or shopping. But there was something about her behavior that made me uneasy. One day, returning from work, I noticed a new object in our yard, a huge truck, one of those used for moving or transporting large loads. I was perplexed. Why would she buy a truck? I entered the house and found her in the kitchen, preparing dinner. "Babe, whose truck is that outside?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She turned around, an enigmatic smile on her face, and replied, "I bought it. I thought it would be useful for us." "Useful for what?" I asked, confused. "For moving, who knows? Or for something else we need to transport." "Don't worry about it." But I was worried. Buying a truck was not a common decision, and the fact that she hadn't consulted me beforehand only added to my discomfort. For the next few days, the truck remained parked in our yard, like a silent, menacing presence. I couldn't get the idea out of my head that something was very wrong. My girlfriend continued to act strangely, sometimes affectionate and attentive, sometimes distant and mysterious. One night while we were watching TV, she turned to me and suddenly asked, "Do you trust me?" "Of course I do," I replied, surprised by the question. She just nodded but didn't say anything else. That question kept echoing in my mind. If she needed to ask me that, did she not trust me herself? Things got to the point where I felt constantly apprehensive. The truck, parked outside, seemed like a metaphor for the secrets and mistrust that were building up between us. I began to discreetly investigate, trying to understand the reason behind that purchase. I discovered that she was hanging out with a group of people I didn't know, people with interests and behaviors that didn't make sense to me. One day, while she was out, I decided to check the truck. I opened the back door and found it empty, but the mere fact of being there, with all its implications, made me increasingly nervous. I confronted her that night, trying to remain calm. "We need to talk. What's going on? Why did you buy that truck?" She looked at me seriously and said, "You will understand everything in due time. Trust me, please." But how could I trust? Things were getting out of control, and I was becoming increasingly paranoid. The only thing I knew was that our relationship would never be the same. I was scared of what might come next, and whether the truck was just the beginning of something much bigger and scarier. The presence of the truck continued to haunt me. However, I tried to get on with my life, going to work and maintaining my routine. My girlfriend, on the other hand, seemed increasingly distant. His unexplained departures and the mystery surrounding the truck left the atmosphere at home charged. One day, coming home from work, I found her going through boxes in the truck. I decided I couldn't postpone the conversation any longer. "You need to tell me what's going on," I insisted. She sighed, looking at me with a mix of frustration and sadness. "I'm trying to protect us," she said. "There are things you wouldn't understand." "Protect us from what?" I asked, perplexed. "What are you talking about?" She shook her head, without giving further details. I was getting desperate. The situation was affecting my sleep and work performance. I needed to understand what was happening. That night, after a heated argument, she finally spilled the beans. "I'm being threatened," she confessed. "I received anonymous messages saying that someone from my past is after me. That's why I bought the truck, so we can be prepared to escape if necessary." That took me by surprise. The idea that someone could be after her terrified me. I felt guilty for not realizing what was happening sooner. I promised her that I would protect her, that we would solve this together. Over the next few days, I started to notice strange cars parked on the street, people who seemed to be watching us. Paranoia began to consume me. My girlfriend, although more open with me, remained restless and always looking over her shoulder. One night, we were woken up by a loud noise in the backyard. I ran to see what it was and found the truck with the doors open. Someone had tried to break into it. That was the turning point. We knew we couldn't stay there any longer. We decided that the next day, we would pack our things and leave. We quickly started packing everything up. During the early hours of the morning, as I filled the truck with our things, my mind was racing. Could we escape? Were we really being persecuted? Just as we were ready to leave, my girlfriend got a call. She answered, and I saw her face change expression. She turned pale, holding the phone tightly. "Who was?" I asked, worried. She hung up, took a deep breath, and said, "We need to go now." We got into the truck and quickly left the city. During the trip, she explained that she had received one last threat. Someone knew exactly where we were and what we were doing. This was all very strange, until at one point I ended up losing my patience and said, "I want to break up. This doesn't make any sense anymore. First, you bring me to another city. I have my house. I don't need to stay in every different place. She came to face me and said that everything she did was out of love. I responded by saying that she was crazy, that it didn't make any sense to take me to another city and then have other people watching us. I needed to go back to work, and that was crazy. It was all very strange to me until again she said, "So you'd really rather go back to your city to see that Natasha?" I was in disbelief when she said that because I realized that everything that was happening there, the truck she bought, the people looking at me, was all a setup on her part because of a joke made by a friend who made a joke about a childhood sweetheart. At that point, seriously, she started crying. I confessed that there was a feeling of sadness in my chest. It was at that moment that I said, "Stop it. Let's leave here and go back to our city. We won't date anymore." She cried a lot, but told me to forgive her for her paranoia. That was all in her head and that she understood my decision not to stay any longer. She just asked us to go back to my city, that she would drop me off at home, and I innocently accepted. We got into the truck, and the journey back began in silence. I was trying to process everything that had happened, while she seemed lost in her own thoughts. Time passed slowly, and I just wanted it to end soon. After a while, she broke the silence. "You don't understand how much I love you, do you?" she said, her voice shaking. "I understand, but that doesn't justify everything you did. You took me away, made me scared and suspicious. That's not love, that's obsession," I replied, trying to remain calm. She gripped the steering wheel tightly and accelerated the truck. "Can't you see how much I suffer at the idea of you being with someone else? With Natasha?" she screamed, her voice becoming higher-pitched and desperate. "This is all in your head. I've never seen Natasha again. I just want to go home and get on with my life." I shouted back, trying to get her to stop. But she didn't stop. On the contrary, she started driving at high speed, attracting the attention of the police. I could see red and blue lights flashing behind us. "Come on, talk about Natasha again. Do you want to go back to your city just to see her?" she screamed, hysterical. My heart raced. "To the truck. You're going to kill us," I begged, holding on to the bench. She ignored my requests and continued to drive at high speed, hitting several cars on the way. I screamed in despair, trying to find a way out of that situation. The police were approaching, but it seemed like nothing was going to stop the madness. We arrived at my house, and she drove straight into the gate, purposely crashing the truck and destroying the entire front of my house. The impact was violent, but thanks to the truck's airbag, we were not seriously injured. Police arrived immediately, removing her from the truck as she screamed and struggled. I exited the vehicle, dazed and in shock. The police took her away, and I stood there, looking at the destruction of my house, trying to understand how my life had gotten to this point. Over the next few days, I tried to pick up the pieces of my life. I told my friends everything, who were incredulous and, to my surprise, started laughing. "Dude, you only date crazy people," said one of them, laughing. At first, I was irritated by their reaction, but then I realized that maybe that laugh was a way of dealing with the absurd situation I had experienced. After all, sometimes laughter is the best medicine to get through the most difficult and insane moments in life. As I rebuilt my home and tried to move forward, I reflected on the lessons I learned. I promised myself that in the future I would be more careful in choosing my relationships and, above all, I would not ignore the warning signs. Our relationships, my dad did something weird with my girlfriend. My girlfriend and I were a couple that made others envious. She was gorgeous, and I was always well-dressed. I was always thinking about the future. I started working a lot and wanted to study cryptocurrencies because I knew they were investments that required a lot of knowledge to make money since many people lost a lot of cash. I always lived with my dad, who was in his 50s and always stayed calm. After he separated from my mom, he became even more laid back, but I always thought that was just his way. My dad loved to have barbecues and invited his friends, who were also middle-aged men. I was getting very tired due to so much work and studying cryptocurrencies. My dad always came up to me and said, "You work too much. If I were your age, I would enjoy life more. You need to live and experience the good things in life." As I was always practical, I told my dad that my time to live peacefully would come because I would become rich with cryptocurrencies. It was my investment plan. My dad looked at me and said, "Well, all right, but at least come to the barbecue I'm having tomorrow." I replied, "Okay," and asked if I could bring my girlfriend, to which he obviously said yes. So on the day of the barbecue, my dad was with his friends, and they were all laughing while grilling meat and having drinks. I stopped to talk to one of my dad's friends who asked me what I was doing with my life. I told him I was working with investments and that due to this knowledge, I was dedicating myself to studying a lot. My dad's friend started laughing and said, "With such a beautiful woman, you want to think about cryptocurrencies? If I had a woman like that, she would be my greatest investment and treasure." At that moment, I got angry and he became embarrassed. My girlfriend just laughed and told me to let it go. At that moment, I noticed something strange. My dad appeared next to a woman and told him to respect his son's girlfriend. At that moment, I saw my girlfriend start to look at my dad. The barbecue continued that afternoon, with the meat grilling and the delicious smell spreading through the yard. My dad's friends were in a relaxed mood, laughing and sharing old stories. My dad, with his usual calm demeanor, approached my girlfriend and me again, bringing 2 glasses of caipirinha that he had made himself. He handed one glass to me and another to her, smiling gently. "Here for you. Let's enjoy the day and relax a bit." I thanked him and took a sip, feeling the refreshing taste of the drink. My girlfriend, still a little flushed, also accepted the drink and smiled at my dad. "Thank you, Mr. Jorge. It's delicious." My dad laughed and patted the back of the friend who had made the unpleasant comment earlier. "Come on, folks. No heavy atmosphere here. Today is a day for celebration." I was trying to relax, but I couldn't stop thinking about my dad's friend's words. Was I really neglecting my girlfriend? Should I be enjoying life more, as my dad always said? These thoughts spun in my mind as I watched my dad chatting animatedly with his friends and my girlfriend integrating into the group. A little later, my girlfriend pulled me by the arm. "Let's take a walk in the garden. I want to talk to you." I nodded and followed her. My dad's house had a large garden with fruit trees and well-kept flowers. We walked in silence to a wooden bench under a large mango tree, where we sat. "Is everything okay?" I asked, concerned. She sighed, looking at the ground before raising her eyes to meet mine. "Yes, everything is fine. I just wanted to talk a bit. You've been very busy lately, and I understand that. But I also miss spending more time with you like we used to." My heart tightened at her words. "I know, love. I've been dedicating myself a lot to work and studies because I want to build a future for us. I want us to have financial security and be able to achieve our dreams." She nodded, understanding. "I know, and I admire your effort. I just wanted you to know that sometimes the present matters too. Let's make the most of the moments we have together." I held her hand and smiled. "I promise I'll try harder to balance things. You are very important to me, and I don't want you to feel neglected." She smiled back and hugged me. We stayed there, sitting on the bench, enjoying each other's company and the sound of birds in the garden. The rest of the day passed peacefully. We returned to the barbecue area and joined the others. My girlfriend seemed more relaxed, and I felt relieved that we had talked. My dad continued to be lively, interacting with everyone, and I realized how much he valued these moments of togetherness. As night fell, my dad turned on some lights around the yard, creating a cozy atmosphere. The music played softly, and the friends continued chatting and laughing. I sat next to my dad, observing this scene. "Dad, I was thinking about what you said about enjoying life more," I began. He looked at me, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, really? And what did you decide?" I sighed. "I think you're right. I've been so dedicated to work and studies that I'm forgetting to live in the present. I'm going to try to find a better balance." My dad smiled and took a sip of his beer. "I'm glad to hear that. Life is short, son. We have to enjoy the good moments while we can." I nodded, reflecting on his words. He always had a quiet wisdom, a way of seeing life that I was starting to admire more and more. My girlfriend joined us, sitting next to me and holding my hand. "Mr. Jorge, thank you for today. It was a wonderful day." My dad smiled at her. "The pleasure is mine, dear. You're always welcome here. And remember, life is meant to be lived." As the night progressed, I realized that day had been a turning point for me. I needed to find a balance between work, studies, and personal life. I needed to value the moments with my girlfriend and my family more. And above all, I needed to learn to enjoy life, just like my dad did. That night, when I got home, I felt different. There was a new determination in me, a desire to change things for the better. And I knew that with my girlfriend by my side and my dad's support, I could find the balance I was seeking. The following days were marked by a new routine. I started planning my time better, setting specific moments for cryptocurrency studies and work. But I also began dedicating more time to my girlfriend and myself. We went on more outings, had romantic dinners at home, and even started planning small weekend trips. Gradually, I felt a positive change in our relationship. We were closer, more connected. Then one day, I came home earlier than usual. As I entered, I noticed the house was unusually quiet. I walked to the kitchen, and as I passed the door, I heard voices coming from the living room. Approaching, I saw my dad talking to a woman who, at first glance, seemed familiar. The soft light of the room didn't allow a clear view, but as I got closer, my heart almost stopped. The woman looked like my girlfriend. They were talking in a low tone, but it was clear the conversation was intimate. My dad was smiling in a way I had never seen before, and my girlfriend, who had always been reserved with him, seemed completely at ease. For a moment, I was paralyzed, not knowing how to react. The words "life is meant to be lived" echoed in my mind, now with a dark and unsettling meaning. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, trying to understand what was happening, my heart heavy with a mix of suspicion and fear of what I might discover. I became more and more thoughtful. That night was difficult, and I could hardly sleep. I clearly realized it was my girlfriend's voice talking on the phone with my dad. I started taking deep breaths and thought there must be some explanation. It made no sense. Not that I was discrediting my dad, but I was young and had a bright future. I even laughed to myself. It made no sense at all. The next day after work, I went to my girlfriend's house. She was startled and said that I wasn't used to doing that. She asked what had happened for me to arrive early. I told her I decided to come because I missed her, but to my surprise, she got serious and said she knew me very well and that I would never do that without a reason. She asked if something was happening. I held back and stayed quiet because it seemed like women sense things. She hugged me and said everything was fine, not to neglect my studies, that she knew I had a bright future. I felt happy knowing the woman I had by my side. But on the way home, I started to reflect. Nothing made sense. I remember my dad on the phone, took a deep breath, and remembered the day of the barbecue. They exchanged glances between my dad and my girlfriend, the words he said that day. At that moment, I came to the conclusion, either she was lying or I was crazy. I returned to my studies, but decided to take things easy and make her think nothing had happened. Then one day, I came home and told my dad I had a trip to finalize a cryptocurrency course and would be gone for a week. My dad calmly told me to go and invest in my future. That same night, I told my girlfriend about the trip. She cried in front of me and said she loved me very much, that the week would seem like a year away from me. I fooled them both and rented a hotel room near my work for a week. I simply went to watch my house. On Monday, nothing happened. My dad just rested. On Tuesday, the same thing. But on Wednesday night, I saw my dad on the phone again, saying, "I can't take it anymore. We've been apart for too long. He's gone, won't be back until next week." She said it was very risky. My body was trembling all over. The following days were a mix of agony and curiosity. I continued to watch my house, waiting for some sign. On Thursday, everything seemed normal, but on Friday night, finally, the situation changed. I was hiding near the entrance when I saw my girlfriend arriving at my dad's house. She entered hastily, looking around as if making sure no one saw her. I waited a few minutes before approaching the house. Carefully, I positioned myself near a partially open window, where I could hear their voices clearly. They were in the living room, talking in low tones. "I can't take this anymore," said my father, his voice full of frustration. "He's going to find out." My girlfriend replied, her voice trembling. "I know, Jorge, but we can't just stop." "I can't." My heart broke at the direct confirmation. They were together. Anger and pain took over me, and I knew I couldn't keep listening. I wanted to go in and confront them both, but I needed to keep a cool head. I went back to the hotel, my heart heavy. I tried to focus on work and studies, but my mind was racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my girlfriend's smile and my father's words echoing in my head. The betrayal seemed unreal, like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I knew I needed to think calmly about what to do next. I couldn't let anger take over. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out how to handle the situation in a way that wouldn't completely destroy my life. For now, my father and my girlfriend didn't know that I knew, and that was the only advantage I had. I thought about telling my friends the whole situation, but they would all make fun of me. I started reflecting a lot. My father had been without my mother for a long time, and since I was little, my mother always said he was a womanizer. He was my father. On the other hand, the girl I loved, the two of them having an affair. Up until that moment, I thought, I'll talk to them calmly and put an end to the situation. But something inexplicable happened. What I heard was unforgivable. On Friday, I hit again and went to watch my father's house, and to my lack of surprise, I saw my girlfriend arrive again. But this time, my father was more serious, in a way I had never seen before. My girlfriend was smiling in a way I had never seen before. Or rather, I had seen it, the same smile she gave my father on the day of the barbecue. She arrived all attractive for my father and said, "Where's my daddy?" Then she hugged him while he was sitting on the living room sofa. My father, all smiles, with a masculine smile, said, "Come here, daddy's little girl." I was shocked and kept thinking, is it serious that all this happened before my eyes? After all this, I don't even need to explain what happened, right? Afterward, my father and she started talking. My father said, "I think it's time for you to leave the kid." My girlfriend replied, I can't. He loves me. I like him a little too, and he has a promising future." My father, angry, replied, "You have to leave him. After all, he is my son." The two started arguing because my father wanted her to leave me. In the middle of the argument, I appeared seriously. "Was it me you wanted in the conversation?" The two were speechless, saying they could explain. I didn't give either of them a chance, and obviously I broke up with her. Something that shouldn't even have started. Later, I found out that before I dated her, she had been having an affair with my father for years, and I was just part of her game. I decided I didn't want to think about women anymore after that experience. I immersed myself in studies and work with cryptocurrencies. I spent sleepless nights researching, learning, and investing. The pain of betrayal turned into fuel for my determination. While my colleagues went out and had fun, I was in front of the computer, deciphering charts, reading articles, and participating in specialized forums. Over time, I started to see results. My investment strategies began to pay off. I made valuable connections in the industry and attended important conferences. Each success motivated me to continue, and my confidence grew every day. In 2 years, I was already reaping the rewards of my hard work. The investments I made in cryptocurrencies started to yield significant returns. I remember the first big profit I made. It was a moment of pure satisfaction. It wasn't just about the money, but the proof that I could transform my life with my own strength and determination. My lifestyle changed completely. I moved out of my father's house and into a luxury apartment in the city center. I bought what I wanted without worrying about the price. I traveled to exotic destinations and met influential people. My new reality was the result of my hard work and dedication. During this time, I had no contact with my father or my ex-girlfriend. I stayed focused on my goals and avoided any situation that could distract me. However, one day, out of nowhere, I received a message from her. The audacity left me perplexed. She wanted to meet up, saying she missed our conversations and the time we spent together. The irony of it all almost made me laugh. I thought about ignoring it, but I decided to respond. "I'm a businessman now and don't have time to talk to trivial people," I wrote. It was a relief to express that. Her response never came, and for me, that didn't matter. I continued to grow in the world of investments. I started diversifying my businesses, investing in promising startups and real estate. My reputation in the market grew, and I was invited to speak at important events. I became a reference in the world of cryptocurrencies. With each new success, I felt my life taking an even more prosperous turn. I met people who truly supported and believed in me. I made loyal friends who stood by me for who I really was, not for what they could gain from me. My father tried to reconnect a few times, but I was determined to keep my distance. The pain of betrayal was still there, though more distant and dormant. I knew I would need to face it one day, but I wasn't ready yet. Then, one day while reviewing my investments, I received an unexpected call. It was from a major investment firm that wanted to partner with me. They had observed my growth and wanted to join forces to expand our businesses even further. That was a milestone. I signed the contract, and with it, my status in the market rose even higher. Now, looking back, I see how much I've grown. I turned pain and betrayal into fuel for my journey to success. And although the scar is still there, Each victory reminds me that I am stronger than any challenge I've faced. The road ahead was full of possibilities. I was ready to face anything that came my way, knowing that, regardless of what happened, I could always count on myself. So, curious, what did you think of this story? Do you know someone who has lived through something similar? It's breathtakingly serious. Very well, if you made it this far, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next video. Bye.